Metal Gear Solid 3 is without a doubt my favorite in the franchise, mostly due to its baseline greatness as a video game, but also due to the fact that it was the first Metal Gear Solid game I ever played. And this is because when I dedicated myself to playing this series just a few years ago, I decided I would play them in chronological order. So Metal Gear Solid 3, Peace Walker, Portable Ops, 5, 1, 2, and then 4, which I have yet to play due to its lack of modern availability. Come on, Konami, help me out, please. But fun fact, it was actually the announcement of Metal Gear Solid Delta back in 2023 that prompted me to give the original series a shot in the first place. I already had the games downloaded on my Vita with the intention of playing through them eventually, and seeing that Delta announcement trailer, I knew it was finally time. I fell in love immediately and have been eagerly awaiting the release of this remake all year long. In fact, it's the second most anticipated release of this year, right behind the eventual Metroid Prime 4. I also took the time to replay the original Metal Gear Solid 3 just 2 months prior to the recording of this video. It's just so I had a fresh take on the original as I went into the remake. So I've got a lot to say on this one. Let's jump into it. So the first thing I can tell you after playing Metal Gear Solid Delta is that the original absolutely still has its place. I'd be hard pressed to ever tell someone that a remake of an older game should replace the original version. As someone who appreciates retro games, video game history, and the certain aesthetics that a simple 90s polygon can bring, I will always understand and sympathize with anyone who prefers the original vision. That said, I do think Metal Gear Delta does everything it needs to be considered the definitive version of Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, there are remasters that give a simple HD polish and maybe some control changes to fit modern standards, reimaginings that take the base formula of the original game and build a new adventure on top of it. And of course, there is the remake, which features updated visuals, controls, usually some quality of life improvements, perhaps some new modes or settings to tweak with, but still stays very true to the source material. Personally, the remake is my favorite of the re-release genre, if you will, and it's precisely where Metal Gear Solid Delta falls. A lot of people have said that Delta is a safe release, that they almost played it too close to the vest, but I'm sorry, I think that's just the smart thing for Konami to have done in this situation. I mean, could you imagine if they rewrote characters, completely overhauled stealth mechanics, or removed certain sections of the game? You know, I think there's a universe out there where that could work, could be cool, but my gut tells me that is a much higher chance of being corporate suicide. Therefore, Delta is incredibly faithful to the original game in regards to its cutscenes, animations, enemy placement, boss design, environmental layout. It literally is the same game, but with much improved visuals, updated controls, and quality of life features. And that's exactly what I would have done if I were in Konami's shoes. MGS3 is already a fantastic game. Now we just have a choice to play an updated or classic version, whichever we may be in the mood for. A remake such as this may be a layup, but I don't think that's always a terrible thing. So, you want to know what really won me over with Metal Gear Solid Delta? Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, I can't begin to tell you how maddening it was for me to play Metal Gear Solid 3 for the first time and not be able to crouch walk. It does add an extra element of challenge to the sneaking, and after a while you do get used to it, but my god, this just feels right. MGS5 spoiled me in this regard, so I was just thrilled to have this simple implementation in Delta. And same goes for the third-person shooter and button remapping. If I recall, in the original, you had to hold down the right bumper to aim down sights, use the left thumbstick to line up your shot, and then shoot with the square button. This was obviously a lot slower, more tedious, inaccurate, but in defense of this control style, it did, once again, add an extra layer of challenge, and it emphasized the importance of remaining undetected as much as possible. In Delta, the speed and accuracy of the modern controls makes it much easier to remain hidden, pop off a silent shot in the nick of time, and even more so to gun down an entire militia if you have in fact been spotted. Many of the game's boss fights are trivialized as well, which is actually my biggest issue with this release. In my previous video regarding MGS3 and Delta's announcement, I said that one major area I would like to see improvements in are the boss battles. Not that they were bad in the original, but seeing as we were set to receive a silky smooth combat and control revamp in Delta, I figured this was an opportunity to add some layers to these fights. But they didn't. The bosses are precisely as they were, as far as I could tell, which means the balancing was way off. I'm sure if you were a first-time player, they could still pose a threat as you attempt to figure out their gimmick, but as a returning player, oh my god, I positively curb-stomped the Cobra unit and anyone else who got in my way. So yeah, I had some minor grievances with the difficulty of Delta, a bit too easy, but to play devil's advocate, I will say these crisp new controls, the tight aiming, really did make me feel like the legendary super soldier that was Naked Snake. The immersion was off the charts as I quickly snapped a headshot before being spotted or mowed down an enemy soldier as I dove for cover, because that's how I always imagined Snake would operate in this story, and those moments just weren't possible in the original, at least not at my skill level. So there's a give and take here that I ultimately lean towards Delta due to its comfort of control and the badassery it instills at its peak. Plus, there are difficulty options if you did want to ramp it up. Quality of life improvements are great, like all the quick menus you can utilize to heal yourself, swap camos on the fly, or call for assistance on your radio. You can now see the arc of your grenades before you throw them and can reload with a press of a button, which wildly enough, you could not do in the original. So yeah, nothing crazy to say about this stuff. It streamlines the experience, it decreases the amount of time you're going to be scrolling through menus, so awesome stuff, let's keep moving. Visually, the game is incredible. Dare I say, peak. Now, there are some notes on the performance of the game in regards to visual fidelity and the frame rate stuff, but we're going to talk about that later because I've got some ranty stuff to say in that regard. But again, these character models, the reimagined environments and cutscenes are fantastic. I remember seeing the original screenshots that were posted mid-development of Snake, the boss, Volgin, and thinking that a few of them looked a bit uncanny, particularly the boss in Ocelot, but my god, the finished products corrected whatever issues I might have had because they look remarkable. Definitely the definitive version of these characters that I will carry with me in my mind going forward. Oh my god. Oh my god. Dude, did you hear about Metal Gear Solid Delta? No, what about it? I hate to say it. These performance issues are abysmal. Aw, are you serious? I was really looking forward to Delta, man. That was like one of my most hype releases of the year. Yeah, man, it's no joke. Check this out. What are you doing? Don't worry, I'm gonna show you. Look. It's like Snake's ear. Why are you showing me his ear? Dude, are you blind? Not his ear. Look at his hair. Grainy, muddy, unrealistic. And did you hear what Digital Foundry said? 53 frames per second. I can't believe Konami would release a product so half-baked. I'm about to punch you in the face. We really need to have a conversation about what qualifies as performance issues in the modern era of gaming. Launch day Cyberpunk is performance issues. Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch is performance issues. Any launch day Bethesda game is performance issues. And while there are varying levels of brokenness that a game can find itself in, Metal Gear Solid Delta dropping down to 44, 43 frames per second during a high-intensity action sequence, or going back and forth between 720 and 1080p, just doesn't scream performance issues to me. Could it have been better? Would I have preferred a steady 60 frames throughout the entire experience? Absolutely. But does it paint the picture of a disastrous release? No, not for me. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Anytime in your argument, if you have to zoom in 100 times on the main character's eyelashes to prove a point about like graphical fidelity, you have already lost me, and I will not take anything you say seriously for the remainder of the conversation. I am so tired of these close-up side-by-side comparison shots that appear every time a new game comes out. People pointing at the screen and shouting, see bro? You can't even see the reflection in their eyeballs. So muddy. Smear effect. Half-baked. Where's the ray tracing? It drives me absolutely insane, and I'm just going to say that the guys and gals over at Digital Foundry, look, they do some very important work. Some of the data that they're able to extract can be very revealing and interesting, but I think modern audiences have started to rely a little too much on the numbers and less on what they see with their own eyes. I played the entirety of Delta and can point out 2 instances where I noticed any graphical dip or frame rate drop. One instance was at the Rosfett factory at the beginning of the game where I noticed the outline of Snake was a bit blurry, maybe, and the other was at the end, when not the end of the game, when I was fighting the boss. I was in his arena and I shot a goat, and when the food like spawned off of his body, I felt a frame rate drop for like 1 second, and then it returned to normal. And I'll be the first to admit, guys, I am not super sensitive to this kind of stuff. I don't know if it's because I play a lot of retro games or I grew up playing every game at the sub 30 frames, but it's totally possible that other players felt the frame drops more than I did, or they saw the 720p moments more than I did. But I played the entirety of Metal Gear Solid Delta, and at no point did I walk away from a play session with performance issues being at the top of my mind. Like it never got there for me. It never got there for me. You know, oftentimes we hold these corporations to a high standard and we hold their feet to the fire when they release a broken or unfinished product, as we should. But I also think there are times when we start doing this that we need to look ourselves in the mirror and ask what we're doing. What are we doing here? So did I have any true grievances with Delta? A few minor things, yes. I mean, I already mentioned the bosses, that I felt like they could have been balanced a bit better to stay in line with the improved player controls, maybe introduce some new attacks or adjust the arena in a fun and dynamic way. But outside of that, there were some legit lip syncing issues. I don't know if the facial mocap was only fitted for the Japanese language or what, but the mouth movements just didn't always match what was being said. I also had some camera collision stuff going on with the environment. Never really noticed it when traversing the more nature-like environments, but once you go in a building and caves, it did get cramped a handful of times, but again, not a huge deal, really. And lastly, I was just surprised to see loading screens between sections of the map. That's a change that I really felt should have been like automatic. An obvious thing to do for a remake of an older title. Let's make the entire map interconnected with no breaks. They didn't do it. I don't really know why, but again, doesn't really ruin the game for me or anything like that. And so before we wrap this up, I do want to mention one last thing, that being the fun classic callbacks that Konami decided to sprinkle on top of what was already a great release in my opinion. So let's start with the classic camera angle and filters that you can play with if you'd like. I thought this was a nice addition to this remake that they really didn't have to do. In my mind, if I wanted to play with a fixed camera, Konami could have just said, "Sorry bud, this ain't your grandpa's MGS3, go play the original." And I would have had no choice but to reply, yeah, okay, that's totally fair. Will I ever play the entirety of Delta this way? Probably not, but again, it's just cool of them to include it nonetheless. Now, the color filters were a bit of a different story. I did switch back and forth with the legacy filter quite a bit. This gives the game a bit of that piss filter we love so much from the original, but I thought the game was great both with and without that filter, so I'd play a few hours with it on and a few hours with it off. There are some others to play around with, but I wanted as true of a first playthrough experience as I possibly could, so I really didn't mess with those too much. Then we have the special modes featuring an Ape Escape crossover and the unlockable Guy Savage minigame that feels like a cross between Bloodborne and Devil May Cry. Now, both of these existed back in the day, but I never did play either, so these were fun new experiences to me. Now, I legitimately enjoyed the Ape Escape minigame. I don't know how many levels there were, 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe. All take place on maps that you find within the base game, but now you got these little apes running around, hiding in various places, and you gotta shoot them, catch them, and try to do it in a certain amount of time to get a high score. Beat every level, and it unlocks some funny little customizable hats and stuff for Snake whenever you play a new game. The Guy Savage minigame was I it was whatever. It's one level. It's just like a hack and slash. You fight zombies and a vampire. It's over in 5 minutes, and that's it. A cool callback to the original, nothing more, nothing less. But again, just cool inclusions that Konami really didn't have to include, but they decided to anyways. It was a good little celebration. I'm really glad that they decided to include that stuff. It feels like almost like a preservation of history in a weird kind of way. Yeah, I enjoyed the heck out of it. So that's my thoughts on Metal Gear Solid Delta. I love this game so much, whether it's the original or this remake. I don't think you can go wrong with either, but this will be one that I revisit time and time again. I'll probably play the remake, then I'll play the original, then I'll play the remake, then I'll play the original as the years go by. So it'll be fun to have both of them on standby. What a great game. What a great game. But you guys let me know in the comments down below, what did you think of Metal Gear Solid Delta? Is it the definitive version of MGS3 for you? Did you have crazy performance issues that I just am totally oblivious to? Let me know. Let me know if I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I've been called worse things. It's possible. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video around, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Trolls really made me feel like the legendary super soldier that was Solid Snake. How dare Konami release such an unfinished product? Did you hear what Digital Foundry said? 53 frames per second. God, I can't believe. Damn it. I just want to finish off with some of the extra goodies that I almost said Capcom, that Konami just